Eastern Cape Police have arrested 5 suspects in connection with botched circumcisions since the winter initiation season began at the end of May. 30 initiates have died and close to 300 have been admitted to various hospitals across the province since the beginning of this winter. Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi has lashed out at those involved in corrupting the initiation culture and practice, calling them hooligans and tsotsis who should face the full might of the law. While some say the disciplinary training today is not as harsh as it was in the past, we look at the traditional transition from boyhood to manhood and ask this question: has the initiation culture become criminal? Welcome to the forum at 8. We say a very good morning to and welcome Minister Aaron Motsoaledi. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, SABC, and good morning to the listeners.
And we also say good morning to Nkululeko Nxesi. He works for the Community Development Foundation for South Africa, CODEFSA. Good morning to you once again, sir.
Morning, SABC. Good morning to your listeners as well.
Welcome to Nkosi Ngangomhlaba Matanzima, chairperson of the Eastern Cape House of Traditional Leaders. A very good morning to you as well.
Good morning. Good morning to your listeners and good morning to the minister.
Before we start with the discussion, I want us to listen to an earlier interview we had earlier on with Andiswa Sindwana. She is one of the first Xhosa mothers to speak out publicly about the death of her son. She lost her son, Lita, about 2.5 years ago after taking him for medical checkups before he left for initiation school, but he died later of septicemia. Just listen in on the conversation we had with her.
I gave my son to his dad, because a year before that, he had done what we call imbeleko. I don't know the right word. I mean the right word in English. But he did imbeleko on the premise that he, even then, as far back as 2007, he intended to take him through the process. Imbeleko, it's a traditional ritual that they do, I think, to welcome the person in that particular family or clan. Okay. Maybe the man will be able to explain this to you. But when he came back with a necklace, something that looks like a necklace made of a goat's hair skin. So from then onwards, we had an understanding with him, and he initiated the whole thing that he will be taking him through this ritual. I requested my brother to be on leave. In fact, he volunteered to be on leave to sort of also visit him there, because he would be out of East London where we stay. The bush would be somewhere in the rural areas of King Lonsdale. At the start of this whole thing, as Lita was growing up, that's what his name was, I would engage him on these matters because they would be coming on TV every now and then, and I would tell him that, I'm not for this, because of the dangers that are involved. Can you see how people die here? And he was always interested. It's only after the father, I suppose the father and my brother, sort of encouraged him to do it this way. I also asked him, what would happen if something bad happens? No, mommy, I trust dad. I trust my uncle. They will do what is in my best interest. So I relented later on. I thought, well, I trust this guy, so let me rather give in. And when he went there, I was cut off completely from him. There was no contact with him with the telephone, and I would rely on the messages that I get from my brother. And I would constantly inquire each time he comes back from there, how is he? And I was in contact with the dad also telephonically. How is he? He's well. He's doing extremely well. You don't have to worry about anything. Around about 6 o'clock in the morning, I heard the banging knock on my kitchen door. It was my brother, and he was letting me know that Lita is not well. I asked, what do you mean he's not well? I peeped outside because I thought he was outside. He said, no, I brought him to a nearer bush, to a nearer hut where he would be cared for. Just make a porridge for him. What's wrong with him? No, I think he didn't like the food that they were giving him. You see, the thing is with these people, they lie constantly to you. They lie. They don't tell you the truth. I would understand if a person would lie to me and then take the necessary steps to ensure that the boy is well. Maybe they lie because they are trying to protect us. What is the point of lying? And at the end of the day, when everything goes down, at the end of it all, they bring it back to you.
Then you were told that he was taken to a nearby bush. What happened then?
Yes. It was the morning of the 15th. He was at a nearby bush. I waited for a call from my brother to say how he was. I kept SMSing him, phoning him, and he wouldn't pick up. Around about 12 or 12:30, a family friend came over to let me know that he had passed on, just like that. But I understand from others that it was just everywhere on Mixed. Everybody knew except me.
Tell me has your life been like ever since you took part in this documentary to speak out about your experience?
People assume, I suppose because no one has ever, particularly a woman, no one has ever stood up and said, this is wrong. You can't be doing these things. So people will always judge you. It doesn't matter what you do. People judge me. They think of me as being too white. They think of me as being a woman who does not know how to behave and who does not respect the circumcision. They call me Nkazana because I'm not married. So many things, so many things. But I want this to be clear. I'm not bothered about their comments because by virtue of having a son who died through this, I think I'm qualified to have an opinion on this matter, particularly because I still have questions, so many questions that people are not forthcoming with the answers. The best way I can honor my son's memory is to speak out against this veil act that people do and hide behind a culture or a ritual. I think the more that I speak, the more that I raise the awareness of the community on these matters. And I'm hoping that somewhere, somehow, other moms would come and raise their points as well.
Well, that's what we're hoping for during this forum at 8. The question we're asking, has initiation culture become criminal? That was Andisiwe Msindwana, as I mentioned, one of the first Xhosa women to speak out publicly about the death of her son. I'd like to start with you, Minister. You have lashed out at people that you've called hooligans and tsotsis for corrupting a cultural practice. Now, the important question here, is it because of some of these loopholes that you have now more single mothers who are looking after young men who want to partake in this rite of passage? The fact that there is, as she mentioned, the secrecy around the practice that is exacerbating some of these issues. Minister, are you still with us? It seems that we do not have the minister on the line. Let's see if we can get her back. I'm going to try and see if Nkosi Ngangomhlaba Matanzima is with us. He's the chairperson of the Eastern Cape House of Traditional Leaders. Nkosi Matanzima, are you with us?
Hello.
Okay. I believe that the minister is now back on the line. Minister, the question I was asking is some of the loopholes that exist. As you heard, Ms. Msindiswana speaking about the secrecy around the practice, the fact that we're seeing more single mothers whose sons want to partake in this rite of passage, but because women are not allowed to discuss these, are these some of the gaps that criminals are filling? And has this seen initiation culture become more criminalized?
Well, so unfortunately, I couldn't hear her. I was listening very attentively, but the acoustics were such that I couldn't hear what she was saying. So your question is that there are gaps where within the law or within what?
Within the cultural practice, and the law we'll get to in just a moment. But let's talk about the cultural practice, because you've lashed out at what you call hooligans and tsotsis. So what have you then seen as the problem that has led to this situation?
Well, the problem, Sebiso, is that this practice has been there for ages. It has been there for ages, practiced by traditional leaders in a very responsible manner as a passage to manhood. But now it has turned into a commercial enterprise, which has attracted lots of people who I described as hooligans, who are establishing illegal schools all over. But unfortunately, it's not as easy as that, because they are not necessarily not getting cooperation from some of the communities. They are. I'm sure Ngululegu will explain to you, because it's there on the ground. A situation in Condoland where some mothers actively collaborate. The mother you were talking to is quite different. Is saying something opposite. But there are areas where mothers actively collaborate with some of these people, or areas where he will tell you in Condoland, kids coming from school just agree upon themselves when they meet somebody who says I can do it. They say let's go. So it's a very complex issue which must involve not only the law but communities. As Nkululeko explained it, he said it's also becoming a sociological problem, which unfortunately people who want to make a quick buck, people who are heartless, are taking advantage of.
Minister, you're right in the sense that it is a different situation where there was consent. The father and the uncle were responsible for this, but I was using that as an example, some of the difficulties, some of the walls that she came up against. And I'd like to pose this question to you, Nkosi Matanzima. The fact that as a woman, she was not able to partake in discussions around her son, obviously while she was there and thereafter. The question I'm asking is, are criminals using these loopholes to then corrupt the cultural system? The fact that women are not supposed to talk about it, the fact that, for instance, there's secrecy, as she mentioned.
Maybe I'm just like the minister. I think my line is letting me down because it is breaking. I couldn't hear everything which was said by the lady. But coming to your question, yes, criminals are taking the advantage of these difficulties. It is not only the criminals, but also people who are a little bit, careless, because as I was listening to this lady, these people who took the child up to the mountain are the relatives to the child. In my view, those people should be, more careful about what they were doing there. But I agree. There's a lot of criminality. People, they want to commercialize this thing. Secondly, in the province, in the Eastern Cape, as we speak, many boys have been killed, literally killed by beating. So we cannot explain that except to say the criminals are taking chances now, and as I said, both commercializing this and killing the people.
Nkululeko Nxesi, what is the problem? You work with an NGO, Community Development Foundation for South Africa. What is being exploited here? Is it the culture of initiation, or is it circumcision? What is making criminals use this practice to, as you mentioned, reap about R500,000 per season? That's obviously a money-making scheme of sorts that has absolutely no morals.
Yes, Tabiso, I must agree with you that, and also with what the minister was saying, that this practice has been is becoming highly commercialized, and there are a lot of criminal elements involved in it. I would also like to answer your earlier question about the gender dimension to it. I want to agree with you because on the ground, not only in OR Tambo where we are, but also other areas like Alfred and so and other parts of the province, where these criminals, they target single parents, they target women, and then coercing them to release their children to go to initiation schools. In fact, yesterday we had a case. Even now we are busy looking for 4 initiates who have been missing. As I'm speaking with you, I'm on the field. These guys, they ran away from the initiation school. They went back to their homes. And these thugs, they followed them, and then they coerced the single parents who are mainly women, and then forcing them to release their kids. Yes, there's an issue of vulnerability of women, and another new dimension that we have just identified is that in areas where the chiefs are women, because in terms of the initiation legislation, a chief has to legalize initiation schools. In areas where the chiefs are women, you find a lot of illegal initiation schools because these thugs, they go and threaten these women. So I agree with you. That's why as CODESA, in partnership with the Department of Health and the House of Traditional Leaders, we are going to be having a dialogue with women, around their involvement. Because traditionally, I don't agree with the notion that women, they don't have a role. Women, they had a role in the initiation, but these roles were clearly defined. There was a way of communicating with your child. Even if your child is in the mountain, you will know on daily basis about the condition of your child. But what we are dealing with here, we're dealing with people who do not know the culture, who do not know the circumcision, who do not know the initiation, who are using this to make money. In the process, they kill our kids.
I'll get to the issue of legislation with the minister in just a moment, but just quickly, Mr. Nglesi, you've said the problem is that people are being arrested, but when that happens thereafter, there are cases of people just being let out a day afterwards. Where do you see being the problem?
You see, that's why I was saying it's not going to be the Department of Health and the House of Traditional Leaders alone that are going to address this. The Department of Justice, the police must come, the security cluster must come on board. What they do is either the prosecutors or the law enforcers, they do not properly understand the legislation on initiation. Or, for instance, yesterday, again, if I were to make a specific example, we came to a certain police station in a village called Kwampisi. Here was this initiator who was being beaten to death by these thugs. And then we went to police station, and then the police, they just said, they don't have a role to play. We had to call police from town to come and reinforce us. So we're saying the Department of Police must educate their officers, but then the Justice Department must also take this into account, and they must be serious about it, because there is no point of arresting people today and then tomorrow they are released. Health and traditional affairs we can't arrest people. We can only raise awareness. We can only bring people, but we can't prosecute. So the relevant department must do their role.
0891 104 208 0891 104 208. Minister, let's get then to the issue of legislation. The Traditional Circumcision Act, what does it say? Does it criminalize those who are involved in illegal or bogus circumcision schools, or act as traditional healers who are recognized to do this? The Eastern Cape, as far as I know, that province has enacted the law, but Mpumalanga, that's still in the process of doing that.
Well, unfortunately, the acts differ from province to province, and that is so because don't think this culture is homogeneous. It's not practiced in a similar way everywhere. For instance, in Limpopo specifically, most of the three tribal groups is the Sepedi speaking, the Bavenda speaking, and the Batsonga speaking. It is the role of the traditional leader to establish this type of school. And in terms of the law, they also apply to the Department of Cocta. They must make an application, and that application can be rejected or approved. But now criminals don't all those laws. And in the Eastern Cape, it does not necessarily mean initiation is the role of the traditional leader only. It can also be a family affair. In some areas of the Eastern Cape, I'm speaking under correction, Gurulek will correct me because he understands it better. I understand some families, 5 or 2, even 3 families can just come together and get somebody who can do it.
Yes,
and
correct.
So in that way, it is out of the role of traditional leaders. It's a family affair. Where families agree, the traditional leader doesn't even have to know. So it's different practices. And Gurulek, I'm sure you'll correct that if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct, Minister, correct.
Nkosima Tanzima, is this what you find in your province?
Yes, yes, the minister is correct. In the Pondoland area, where this culture was suspended for some years, you find these elements there, where people will just come together and take a decision that they are going to circumcise their son, or even just a parent alone to say, I'm taking you up there to the surgical man. So then, therefore, it becomes a little bit difficult. But I also agree with the minister that even before, in Pondoland, even before the suspension of this culture was practiced under the authority and guidance of traditional leaders. And even when it was suspended by the king of that area, King Faku. So what is lacking in that area is that we were talking to the traditional leaders and the kings of that area to say, because this custom was suspended by the leadership of the Pondos, it is necessary in terms of our custom that the leadership of Pondos should bring back this culture themselves and lead it, just to make an example, just like the king of the Zulus. So that, I think that needs to be addressed by the Pondos.
So you're calling for better regulation, that it should be brought back but have better regulation, am I correct?
Yeah, you are correct. It should be brought back with better regulations, regulated by traditional leaders and their people.
Well,
the act we are having in the province, it's not dealing with these difficulties that we are speaking. It is only addressing the question of cleanliness. In the bush. Even its title will not talk about criminals and other things. They just concerned about the health standards.
So there's the issue of health standards and there's criminals. We'll look at that, Nkosi Matanzima, in just a moment. Let me take calls 0891 104 208. If I could just ask the listeners to be as brief as possible, because we've got quite a lot of calls coming through, a lot of SMSs, and we'd like to be able to deal with all of you. Boko in Pretoria, initiation should be criminalized. That's your view?
That's my view, Tsepiso, and very good morning to the minister and also to the king and also to yourself. It should be criminalized, but I need to be very clear in this. Not the whole practice as initiation, but it should be criminalized in particular to those traditional surgeons who will illegitimately have the schools which are, for instance, illegal. Those ones